Okay, guys, and we're back with another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest. I'm Seth from the Solo Solo podcast, and this episode I'm going to be talking about a movie I saw just the other day, The Accountant 2. Now, The Accountant 2 is starring Ben Affleck and John Bernthal. It's a sequel from, obviously, you can imagine, The Accountant. It's about Ben Affleck playing this sort of, I guess, clearly autistic, accountant. He talks like Zoolander. Ben Stiller and Zoolander. That's how Ben Affleck's character talks. So maybe, as you can tell from the get go, I'm not a huge fan of this movie, even in the way I'm describing him. Even though Zoolander is actually a pretty good film. The Accountant 2, on the other hand, not so much. Now, the past few years, I'd say there's been a handful of good action films come out. The Amateur was a decent action film. John Wick 4 really good. Extraction 2 was really good as well. Novocaine was somewhat entertaining, and then you get a film like The Accountant 2, which is just many, not many, but a few tiers quite significantly below those films, right? I was saying Novocaine and The Amateur were okay-ish action films. The Accountant 2 is probably even worse because, you know, he's just basically a guy who goes out and shoots people or who solves crime. He's trying to solve a crime, and shoots people. Whereas films like Novocaine or The Amateur, there were certain plot devices put in to make the action a bit more interesting and give it an extra layer. Where in Novocaine, the whole thing is Novocaine can't feel pain, right? That makes for an interesting dynamic immediately, right? But just because he can't feel pain doesn't mean he can't die. So he could be bleeding out and not know, right? And then you get The Amateur, where the guy who's playing the amateur is not the guy who's playing him, but the character is clearly he's not a killer, right? But he wants to kill these people nonetheless. So he needs to find creative ways to try and kill these people, right? The Accountant 2 is nope, I'm a guy who's got all the resources and have no problem killing these people, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I just need to find them. He finds them and then goes about doing that. Do you know what I mean? He's run of the mill. I didn't see the first film, but the person who I saw the first film with, no, the person who I just saw the second film with, just saw The Accountant 2 with, has seen The Accountant 1. And they're saying, The Accountant 1 was really good. And you could tell they were trying to build on a relationship between Ben Affleck and John Bernthal in the first film, right? And in the second film, that relationship has gone, basically paper thin, and it's just a really sort of awkward relationship. Both the thing is, they're both badasses in action scenes. Ben Affleck's character is this weird nerd who just sounds like Zoolander. Like I said, Ben Stiller from Zoolander, really weird, but yeah, pretty boring as well. Even the action wasn't that great, if I'm being honest. It's not even like they had really amazing action scenes that could save them. I mean, a few cool moments, a few long takes, but really nothing special, And I'm not even comparing it to the John Wick 4s or the Extraction 2s. I'm not even comparing it to them because it's not even worth putting them in the same conversation. I'm not even comparing it to. I'm comparing it to that tier below with Novocaine and The Amateur, and The Accountant 2 is even worse than those films, right? Looking at the production budget for The Accountant 2, going off the numbers.com, it looks like it's supposed to be about 80 million this film cost, which I can kind of understand, even though not really, because even though it was all on location, it looks like these places didn't look like they're particularly expensive to go to. Like, they're in the desert more time, and it's not like it's not like they're in uptown New York or like in New York City, New York on a strip where they have to lock off, entire parts of the city to make this film like a Spider-Man, like an Amazing Spider-Man, which was shot, large parts of it actually in New York. That's obviously going to inflate the production budget. But if you're just going to a desert and having some action scenes, like, that shouldn't cost that much money in 2025, right? But I imagine getting John Bernthal and Ben Affleck back for the film, because I mean, there's no one else recognizable in this film apart from those two. Yes, those two, and those two probably took all the budget up as well, getting those two back. Because of course they're both big stars. Ben Affleck and John Bernthal are huge stars at the moment, and very talented actors too. But this film really doesn't get the best out of them. But like I said, an 80 million production budget, and then on its opening domestic weekend, it's on track to make just under 10 million, just under $10 million on its opening domestic weekend. And I'm looking at a production budget of 80 million, and you're making back just over 10% in the first week. And particularly with a film like this, where it's not actually a great film, where if it was actually a good film that's maybe initially underperforming, you could maybe rely on it to get some momentum through word of mouth on social media as like actually low-key a good movie. The Accountant 2 is not actually that good at all. It's pretty boring actually. So they've only really got one shot at it. You know what I mean? Like, no one's going to be like watching The Accountant 2 and then be like, oh, you've got to watch it. They'll be like, have you seen it? Yeah, it's nothing special. And then people won't go and watch it. So it's not going to be one of those films that opening weekend does okay or does these numbers, and then you see the second and third week it starts to rise. That's not going to happen. This is as good as it's going to get for them. So, second week they're at 10 now. Second week they may make 8 or 9. They may make 8 or 9, and then the following week they'll start to really fall off, probably making 6, 5s, 4 million maybe. And then after that, it'll be down to like 2 or 3 mil a week, and then it'll be, do you know what I mean? It'll just keep going down and down and down, and then eventually just be out of cinema because these films don't stay in theatre forever. So then, cumulatively, maybe they'd make half of it back. Maybe they make 30, 40 million back in box office. And then what? They sell it to a streaming service. I can't remember who it was produced by. I want to say it's a Fox film, but I think I missed the opening credits, to be fair, so I've got no idea. Maybe if it's one of the studios with a streaming service, maybe they just put it on there, but that's not going to make them any more money. Or they sell it to Netflix, maybe, give them a lease on it for a few years, make a few more mil off that, maybe. But you're not making 80 million back on this film, is what I'm trying to say. That's the bread and potatoes of what I'm trying to say, the bread and butter of what I'm really trying to say. They spent 80 million on this, whichever studio it is, and they are not recouping. Because The Accountant 2 is a very boring film, in my opinion. Where I was giving Novocaine and The Amateur around 2.5, 3 stars, The Accountant 2 gets 1.5 stars. Being honest, it's a really, really nothing film. But yeah, another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest in the bag, and I'm out. Peace.